Welcome to Photoshop User TV, produced by Photoshop User Magazine and the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here are your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Dave Cross, Matt Kloskowski, and Scott Kelby.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by CDW. For hardware, software, gadgets, and more, CDW has the right technology right now. And iStock Photo, the world's preeminent collection of member-generated royalty-free images and digital art. On1 Software, developers of award-winning plugins that help you maximize the power of Photoshop.
Well, hi everybody, and welcome to our last show of 2007. Of course, unless you're watching this later in the week, then it's
the first show of
the first show of 2008.
Confused already.
Well, hi everybody, I'm Scott Kelby, and joining me here is Mr. Matt Kloskowski.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy New Year and all that fun stuff.
And Dave Krosky.
Hello there.
And welcome. We're the Photoshop guys, and this show is brought to you by the fine people who bring you this magazine right here, Photoshop User Magazine. And by the fine people, I mean me, Matt, and Dave.
Is that a New Year's resolution? Is that a little change?
Yeah, my New Year's resolution is not to say the fine people. Is to come up with something new for next year. However, if I can't come up with something new, you know what I'll do? The fine people. I've also have a couple other New Year's resolutions. Don't say rockin' the house key. Don't say foreign man from a foreign land.
Can't imagine.
I'll come up with new things. I need new material. Badly.
He's taking entries.
Hey, we have a very special show for you today, but before we get to our very special show, I want to tell you, you probably guys heard Larry Becker last week talk about the new launch of the R. Kelby Training subscription service. Because we've been offering online classes for a while, and Dave's done some, I've done some, Matt's done some, and a bunch of our friends. But we just recently launched a brand new thing. I don't know if you saw last week's show, but if you didn't, go back and watch last week's show for the whole scoop. But basically, we launched an online subscription service where now you can pay one incredibly low price and watch all of our training classes. Now, when we launched, we had about 34 online training classes, mostly on Photoshop, but on a couple other products, like Illustrator and InDesign and stuff like that. But it's mostly Photoshop because, well, we're the Photoshop guys. So anyway, but it's go check it out. It's at kelbytraining.com. There's a little video there called. It's a tour. There's a video that basically how it works, tells you the whole story. So go check it out. It's pretty cool. And
Very cool.
There's brand new classes from myself and from Matt. And Matt's got a brand new class called the Adobe Ace Boot Camp, which basically prepares you to pass the test, the Adobe Ace test. And Matt used to teach that pre-conference. So did Dave.
Yes, I did.
And Dave, you got classes online now?
Yeah, I got a bunch of finishing touches and beginners classes.
There you go. And you've got a layers class, right? CS3 layers?
I got a layers class. I got one for wedding photographers.
One for wedding photographers. I just put up my brand new Photoshop CS3 for digital photographers. I'm working on one right now for professional retouching techniques. So lots of cool stuff there. But it's not just me. It's not just Matt and Dave. We're talking Katrine Eisman. We've got
Dan Margulis.
Yeah, Dan Margulis, Moose Peterson, Bert Monroy, every big name you can think of, you'll see them all there. I mean, if it's anybody that's really, really good in this industry, well, they're there. So
I think it's important to know, too, it's not just the Creative Suite stuff, but we've got some really cool photography courses coming, like Lighting with Joe McNally, and Wedding with David Zeiser.
Yeah, David Zeiser really on location. Stuff. That's what's kind of cool about it, too, is like they went on location with Moose Peterson. We flew a video crew out to Montana, and you're learning landscape photography really out there, just like you'd be at like a DLWS workshop, or learning in the studio or on location with Joe McNally. We got David Zeiser taking a crew to a church. It's just incredible. Go check it out. It's amazing stuff. We're very excited about it. Great way to start the new year. But we have a special show for you. Tell them about it, Matt.
Tips. All tips. And tips, and more tips.
How many tips precisely?
50.
At least 50. Could be 51. And we only have the time that we have this show to fit in all 50. So we're just going to go bang, 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 bang through tips from all levels, from beginner stuff to advanced stuff to cool stuff to Canadian stuff. It's all coming. We're going to start with a foreign man from a foreign land. Then we're going to go right over to Matt Kloskowski, who's rocking the house.
Well, before we do that, I just want to...
Wow, that was a short... That's like my diet resolution too, right?
I'm a little surprised that neither of you noticed the fact that for the first time in the history of the show, I'm not wearing a Canada shirt. And there's a very specific reason for that.
I noticed.
It's Canada Day.
No, it's not that.
Boxing
It's
Day.
because, as you know, I recently became a permanent resident of this fine country of the United States of America.
How about that?
But I also thought, I'm spending all this money getting shirts with maple leafs, it might be easier just to go for this instead. So here's my
a tag.
brand new Canadian representing Made in Canada barcode. I haven't scanned it in Walmart yet, but I imagine it's for Canadian bacon or something like that.
Wow.
So there we go.
It's for poutine.
My son and I celebrated our permanent residence in the U.S. by going and getting Canadian tattoos
That's
yesterday.
the first we saw that.
That's the first I saw. That's it's pricey. Can we see your green card? Do you have it with you?
I do not have it with me. It's locked away in a very careful place. But
Dave's going to get the sleeves next.
Oh, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'll be having like Photoshop tips engraved down there.
Well,
so,
Dave, welcome to our fine country. Thank you for stealing American jobs. Okay.
But now I'm ready to do a tip. So I just
All
wanted
right.
to mention that because I knew some people would be wondering what's with the whole lack of Canada shirts.
Yeah,
So
you know what? That was weird. I'm glad.
here's my first tip.
mentioned that.
In this, whoops, I don't need to zoom in yet. We'll show you. All I've done is created a simple little layer just to show you. And over here we have the opacity. Now this is one of these tips that many people know, but a lot of people don't. They still have a habit of when they want to change the opacity, they click on the little opacity to bring up the slider, but that's the hard way instead. You just position your mouse on top of the word opacity and you get this little scrubby slider that lets you scrub to change the opacity, which in the long run is much quicker than always popping up that slider. And that happens just about everywhere in Photoshop where there is a percentage or some other number you can change. So there you go.
Very cool. Tip. All right, mine is for you to find some brushes that very few people use. They're called the Photoshop Special Effects brushes. What's cool about these brushes is they look photographic. So to find them, you go grab the brush tool first, of course, go up here and grab the brush picker, and then down here you'll find special effects brushes. And some of them are photographic and some of them just have, are pretty cool looking stuff. For example, there's this one that kind of looks like flowers and stuff. Check it out. And it's all ready to go.
Very flowery.
See, very cool, very kind of 70s or that other thing too. All right, so there's one. Let me just show you a couple others real quick. I mean, there's some cool stuff. There's some stuff you probably won't use so much. Like duck one I haven't used a whole bunch, but it's just darn nice to know it's there in case your art director comes in and says, I really need a bunch of ducks. And there's different flowers and things. I mean, there are some of them are photographic, and these are roses, right? Of course, you can change the size of these too and go for the giant rose. But look, they're photographic, So I mean, they're right there. Now, one last tip about this tip is if you're hesitant about loading these and you're afraid you can't get the default brushes back, all you do is go up here to the same little pop-down menu and just choose Reset Brushes, and it brings them back. Mr. Kloskowski, you're up, buddy.
Next up here, we have the little color picker down here. You can see your foreground, background color swatches. I'm going to click on the foreground one, and the tip is if you wanted to see the equivalent Pantone color to maybe a color that you have selected here, all you got to do is click on Color Libraries, and it automatically shows you the equivalent color. It's not going to always be the same thing, but it'll be equivalent, and you can see here it's not always going to pop up green. Let's say I choose a blue color here, click on Color Libraries, and it goes to that color as well. And then just click on Picker, and that takes you right back to the same color picker.
Very nice.
Beauty, eh?
Beauty.
Mr. Cross?
Well, here's another. My first few tips are kind of in those category of you might know this, but if you don't, it'll be a quick time saver. And a lot of dialog boxes in Photoshop, if you're experimenting, making changes, here I am in levels and I'm playing around with these sliders and making a real mess. Many of us have a tendency to cancel out of the dialog box and then reopen it, but instead just hold down Option on the Mac or Alt for PC, and look, the cancel button changes to reset. You hit it and you just start all over again, just like that.
Great tip. I use it every day. Alrighty, my tip is a Camera Raw tip. It's a CS3 Camera Raw tip. So in Camera Raw for CS3, you have, of course, some great new things like the clarity slider. And then you've got over here some new sharpening sliders. Well, you can see right here it says basically you need to zoom to 100% or larger to really see the effects of the controls in this panel. And that's the same for clarity too. I mean, clarity you can see it, but it's nice if you get it up to 100% I'm pointing at contrast, but I mean clarity down here. At 100%. Here's a quick way to get right to 100% so you can see. Just double click right here on the magnifying glass tool right there in the box. It jumps you to, if you see right down here, a 100% view so you see your stuff very quickly.
Nice. All right, this one, I love this tip actually. So let's say you're surfing a website and you find a cool color that you want to use from that website in one of your designs. Well, all you got to do is you go into Photoshop and position your windows so you can still see the website. See, I can see the website back there. Position your window so you can still see your document and the website. Grab your eyedropper tool, and then you've got to click on your document. All right, so click on this. This is just a white document. Click on it. Don't let up on the mouse here. Just drag over something, and you'll see it changes my foreground color to whatever that eyedropper is over. Take down here, see it goes to blue, black, gray, green. Anything that I go over on the desktop in another image, anywhere else, I can grab that color and set it to my foreground inside Photoshop.
Nice.
I'm done.
Sweet.
Okay, good. Well, I'm thinking of a really cool tip.
I like that one, Dave.
Oh yeah, great.
Very good.
So here's my next tip, and that is when you're using the lasso tool and you're trying to select something and you get towards the bottom and you're zooming, you see those scroll bars. If you go too far, it's going to suddenly start scrolling on you or it won't go where you want. It's just going to become a mess. So the trick is when you start to use your lasso tool, you hold down the space bar, scroll your window, let go of the space bar, and then keep using it. So that way, anytime you're in control, so you're deciding when the window scrolls. Look at that lovely selection.
Yeah, I hate it when you go down far and all of a sudden
Yeah,
shoots
so this
you down.
way you're in control of it.
Very nice. All right, I'm back in camera raw. Same image. I just made it into a black and white real quick. This one is for when you've made a change and you want to get back to the default. So if you think, you know, I put my recovery up at 98 and I really wish I hadn't done that. I want to get back to where it was when I started. If you double click directly, I'm going to have to zoom in here. If you double click directly on the little nub, or I don't know what the word you call that is, the knob, the slider, the thing. If you double click directly on it, it just resets that tool to what it was when you originally opened up the image. So there's a quick tip.
Quick tip,
Camera raw.
definitely not obvious because you would not think to do that.
No, you wouldn't.
Now we do.
All right, this one's working with filters. So let's say we go up to the filter menu here. I'll apply, let's say, maybe a sharpening filter. All right, filter unsharp mask, and I'll leave the settings 100, 1, and 4. Click OK. Well, if you want to reapply that filter to another image or to the same image again, you can press Command F on the Mac, Control F on the PC, and it'll automatically apply it. Or if you want to reapply it, it'll automatically apply it using the same settings you just used. If you want to reapply it, but you want to open up the dialog box, do Command Option F on the Mac or Control Alt F on the PC. That'll open the dialog box so you can change the settings and then hit OK.
Very nice.
Yay, Matt.
I was hoping that was going to be about 14 seconds longer so I
I'll
could
go.
get this document open.
I'll go.
And then you can hit the cancel button if you wanted to get out of the dialog box, and that would
dialog.
thus cancel
Wow, that's a
the
great way
filter.
to eat up.
thus.
Okay, perfect.
Or you know, you
Thank
could also hit the escape key.
Or
to
the
close
escape
that.
key.
There you go.
Very nice. Okay, thank you for that little extra time. Here's a tip that's always been around, but in CS3 it's even better, and that is these little floating panels, or as some people still call them, palettes. If I start to zoom in to view this document at a certain point, I'm going to run into those palettes, and that'll be how big it'll let me get. So if I press Shift-Tab, then I can zoom in, take up my whole screen, and in CS3, if you want to get the palettes back, instead of going and pressing the same shortcut, you just hover over the side of your monitor, and then you get the menus or the palettes you want, you make whatever change, whatever it is you want to do, you move away from it and keep working. So instead of having to always be pressing Shift-Tab, they just pop up there for you whenever you need them, giving you all that extra real estate to do stuff.
Very Lightroom-like, Dave.
It is.
Alrighty. My tip is one of those tips that's kind of, it's been around, it's been in Photoshop since Photoshop 6, but a lot of people don't realize it's there. Let's take a look up in the options bar. So I've got the brush tool selected, and I've got a number of options that I've chosen here in the dialog box. I've got color burn for my mode. I've set the opacity down to 45%. I've got the flow set to 50. I've got the airbrush on. All these things are turned on. If you ever want to get back to the defaults and have everything set back to normal, all you have to do is go over here to where the brush is. See the little down arrow? You're going to control click on Mac or right click on PC. A menu pops up called Reset Tool. Hit it and it sets it all back to its defaults for you instantaneously, just like that.
Please keep talking for about 10 more seconds.
All right, how about that? Let's see. Did we
Okay.
mention the scrubby slider? Oh, I do have a scrubby slider tip that Dave, that builds on Dave's. Okay, Dave talked about how you could click on the word and change it, but if you hold the Shift key, it moves in huge increments. It moves much, much faster. Now, so if you want to get to 100 quick, just hold the Shift key instead if you have to scroll. Because look how far you have to drag, right, to go all the way over there, right? But if you hold the Shift key, it's like, it's there. That's
All
an
right.
added bonus tip. that
And
takes
if you
up a
hold
few
down the
seconds.
Option Alt key, it goes slower.
That's right.
So you can scrub slow or fast.
All right. So,
Is that enough time?
yes.
How do we do, man?
Plenty. You know, I felt like I had to go in order, and I just looked at another one. You know, I'm just going to do another one of my tips. So, real quick one. You see us do this all the time. A lot of times you don't even hear us mention it because I think it's so ingrained in everyone, is zooming in and out. All right, the really slow way is to take the magnifying glass
Ooh, slow.
and to click, and then you can option click and go back. All right, the really fast way is to hold down your Command key on Mac, Control key on a PC, and press the plus, and that zooms in. And then you can press minus, and that zooms out. But there's actually a little side tip for this, which is, notice how it expands my whole window here.
Yes, it does.
So if I wanted to just kind of zoom out but leave the window the same size, I could throw in the Option key on the Mac, Alt on PC, and that just zooms in and out of the actual image itself, but it leaves the window around your image, the frame around your image, it leaves it the same size.
Beautiful.
Coolio.
Beauty.
Coolio.
Back to me.
Back to Dave.
Well, I talked earlier about a quick way to change the opacity. That's moving the slider. But if you know the specific opacity you want, just type the first number. So if I want it to be 50%, I just press the number 5. And let me zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. And I'll get to this point where you see my cursor is away from it. I'm not even in that field. So if I press 7 for 70, 3 for 30, and if you want some weird number like 36, you have to go 36 and type it really quickly. Otherwise, it would think 30, 60. But the other trick to this is if you want to change the fill opacity. So let me put the, oh, by the way, 0 for 100, which is kind of odd, but that's what it is. If you want to change this fill percentage, you add in the Shift key. So Shift 5 would change the fill percentage. So if I wanted it to go all the way down to like 10%, I press Shift 1, and the fill opacity would change to 10%, leaving the regular opacity alone. So 2 quick ways to change opacity on the fly.
Dave, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. My tip is a tip for, it's basically kind of an automation tip. So here is an image, I want to color correct it, so I bring up curves, image adjustment, curves, all right? Now the keyboard shortcut for curves is Command M on Mac or Control M on PC. See, it's right there, curves. Okay, so we're gonna bring up curves. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and just do a real quick, simple correction to this. We'll make this our shadow point. We'll make something over here our highlight point, right? Maybe something inside this dish here. There we go, nice and white, and something kind of, there we go. So we've done a correction to this image, and I click OK. And so you can see before and after. Here was before, and there's after. So just a quick correction. Now, if I wanted to apply that same correction to other images like this, all I would do is instead of just pressing Command M or Control M on PC to bring it up, I would add the Option key. So now it's Option Command M, and it brings up the exact same curve setting as I did before. So watch how quickly I can apply that to other images. Just bring it forward, Option Command M on Mac, Alt Control M on PC, and it applies the same exact curve to the next image that I just did, like that.
Very nice. And works with multiple adjustments.
Yeah,
right?
it will work with levels and
curves.
different things like that. It's not just curves, but
Okay.
there you go.
Something every Photoshop user should do. History states. So by default, when you install Photoshop, you get 20 undos.
Which is plenty.
It's never enough. So what you got to do here is go up to your Photoshop menu on the Mac or on the PC. Just go down to Edit, and you're going to go to Preferences. Either way, you can always just press Command or Control K, and that'll get you there as well. Inside your Preferences, you will see a file. Where's it? Performance, not file handling. Performance. Inside Performance is History States. You can see here I already set mine up to 100. So as long as you've got a computer with a decent amount of RAM, not 512K, but as long as you got a computer with a decent amount of RAM and you can handle 100 history states, and you'll definitely want to pump that up just because, 100 is better than 20. So now you get 100 undos instead of just 20. Every Photoshop user should do.
Yes.
Even ones that don't know.
Now they do. Me? Again. Wow, there's sort of a pattern coming here. Talking about brushes again. Scott was talking about brushes before. Here's some brushes you can see. This is the standard set of brushes that have the interesting ones like grass and, hey, a leaf.
Yeah, the marijuana
and
174.
all that kind of stuff. Now, a lot of people know this first shortcut, I'm sure, which is to use the right bracket key to make your brush size larger and the left bracket to make it bigger. But sometimes you don't want to get a bigger brush, you want to go to the next brush in the brushes palette. So for that, you press the period key, and you go next, 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 next. Each time you hit the period key, it goes to the next one. If you want to go back, you use the comma. Now, some people like to think of greater than or less than, and I guess it's the same key, just don't hold down the Shift key, but you'll see this allows you to go through the order of the brushes and find the next or previous brush, in addition to making the brush bigger or smaller using the keyboard.
Lovely. All righty, I've got another one. This one is how to change your font without, like if you don't know what font you want, so you're just kind of stuck and you're like, hey, I don't know what font I want to choose, but you know what you want to write. Here's what you do. double click directly on the type. Here's a tip right here. If you double click directly on the T here in the layers palette, just double click on it, it automatically highlights your entire type on your layer.
Dave Kroskowski.
Dave Kroskowski. All right, so that's a hybrid. Okay, then press Command H on Macintosh or Control H on PC. That hides that highlighting. So the text is highlighted, it's just hidden. Now all you do is go up here to the options bar, click, and then it highlights the field. You can use the up and down arrow keys now on your keyboard. Oh, just click once. It's not working at all. What did I do wrong? What terrible thing did I just do? Come on now. Help me, someone quick. Dave,
Double
Matt.
click's weird.
Let's try it again. Over there. Maybe I have to click here first and then hide it. Aha, I bet that's it. No, it's just not working. Don't do this tip. Let's take a short break. It
Went downhill
just
fast.
feels like break time. All righty. Stick around. We'll be right back. We've got a lot more tips. I don't know how many, but more than what we've done. So stick around. We'll be right back here on Photoshop User TV, brought to you by companies that would not accept responsibility for sponsoring the show right now.
Bye.
Bye. Messed up my tip. Blew it. Trashed it.
Greg, this should get your business going.
Thank you, Bob. Perfect.
With dedicated account managers who understand what you need when you need it, we're there. CDW.
Hi, well, we are back. Scott Kilby here with Dave Cross and Matt Kloskowski. Hey, before the break, my tip crashed and burned. So we couldn't understand why. Matt tried it on his machine. It worked perfect very first time. Came back to my machine, did the exact same thing. It still wouldn't work. Dave Cross came up with a solution. Tell him about it, Dave.
I said, restart.
I did.
Photoshop is not working properly.
I just quit Photoshop, restarted, and then it worked. So let's go ahead and do the tip. Here it is.
Just pretend you didn't see for it.
Pretend
Hey, look at
yeah,
this.
hey, look, I got a new tip for you. It's really great. I'm going to double click the type tool. I'm going to press Command H on Mac, Control H on PC to hide it. We're going to click in there, up arrow down. Now it works, see? See?
The tip is you have to do it 5 times, each time
Yeah.
restarting Photoshop in between.
Jeez, it's up arrow, down arrow keys on my keyboard. It works from time to time.
So can I truly make this a hybrid?
Yeah, it's already selected. Remember, the text is still selected.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Kroskowski. B.
Ah,
That was truly a hybrid.
that's truly a hybrid. All right, please, 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 I beg of you, do
So
your tip.
this tip will work all the time.
Ah, yes. Yeah,
This
yeah.
isn't one of those Kelby
Yeah,
tips.
not my friend anymore.
All right, so this tip, this is your best non-Photoshop tip that you'll ever learn, but it comes in handy when using Photoshop and just about anything else. Whenever I'm teaching a class live, I'll be using Photoshop, and then I'll say, all right, now I'm going to jump over into Bridge. And I do this. And so you saw on screen there, you saw something jumped up and happened. I say, all right, now I'm going to jump back over into Photoshop. So how am I doing that? On the Mac, I press Command-Tab, and on the PC, I press Alt-Tab. And it brings up that all the programs you have open right in the middle, it brings that up, and you just keep pressing the Tab key until you get to the program that you want. Okay, so it's inevitably, whenever I teach a class, and it goes on break, that's the very, very first question people come up and ask me is, how are you doing that little switching thing between the 2 programs there? So that's how you do it.
And you say, it's only my machine that does that. No one else's. Sorry.
Yes.
All right, well, here's a tip when you have a situation like this. I have 2 photos that I took of the same thing, trying a couple different settings, and there's some pretty subtle differences between them. So I have them both open. All I've done is open them side by side. What I want to do is start zooming in, but rather than zoom in on one and then zoom on the other and try and look at the same place, you can automate that process, or process if you prefer, by doing this. I've got them side by side. I've got the zoom tool selected. I hold down the shift key, and when I click on one, look at that. They both zoom in at the same time. And the same theory applies with what is that thing called? The scroller hand, the hand
zoom
tool.
tool.
The movie handy tool.
Movie hand.
I
Grab
usually
it.
just use the
You grab
space
her.
bar, so I have no idea what it's really called. But if you hold down the space bar and the shift key, you can also scroll both windows at the same time. So you can do a real nice comparison to see where the differences are. In this case, the flag is a little different and so on.
It's a nice
so it's a nice
comparison.
way to compare 2 images at the same time.
That comparison's nice.
Thank you.
All right. My tip is for how to be able to change layers without actually having to go to the layers palette and switch layers. So what it is, I'm going to leave the layers palette open so you can see what's happening, but if you hold the command key on Mac or the control key on PC, you can just click, point, and click to a layer and it jumps to that layer. So if I want to switch to the words the end game, I just click down here, it jumps to that layer. In theaters July 22nd, click up there. Want to click to this picture, you just click right there. Want to click to these guys, just click over there. As long as you're holding the command key down on Mac, the control key down on PC, you can just look at the layer and jump right to it.
Cool.
Big time saver,
Big
use it
time saver.
all the time.
Very nice.
Big.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Oh, yeah.
One thing that makes that really useful is when you have your layers named too, because when you start popping up and clicking, you want to make sure you're going to pop up a list of layers is the other way to do it. If they're all called layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's pretty tough to know. So if you name your layers, popping up a list will make more sense.
Here's a tip on naming layers. Don't know.
Wow, what luck.
So here's a tip, automation tip. So if you go to the File menu, you go down to Automate, you'll see all the different cool automations you can do, like something like Web Photo Gallery, and that opens up. And the very first thing you always have to do is choose images to apply that automation to. All right, and you get to choose a folder or something else. Go in here and click through and find your images. But that's kind of a pain in the neck because inside a Bridge, you can go into the Tools menu, and you can do the same thing. Go to Tools, go down to Photoshop, and I could go to something like Web Photo Gallery, and this way, I can visually pick the images I want to send to the Web Photo Gallery. So let's say you've got a folder full of 30 images. If you did it in Photoshop, it's going to take all 30, whether you want it to or not. Inside Bridge, you could go through and just kind of mix and match and pick exactly the photos you want to put into the gallery, and then run the automation, and it just takes those photos.
That's it? No, I'm just kidding.
We're waiting for that. Where's the rest
Waiting
of
for
it?
the shoe to fall. No, that's good.
All right, well here my tip has to do with the pen tool. If you're looking at using the pen tool, there's all these other editing tools like the add anchor point, delete anchor point, convert anchor point tool, Yes, there are a series of other tools,
Breathe
but
deeply.
my tip is don't use them. How about that for a tip? Because here's the thing, as we like to say, when you're using the pen tool and making a path, you have all these anchor points. Instead of going and clicking on the Add Anchor Point tool, automatically it assumes if you click on a place where there is not an anchor point, it will add one. By the same token, rather than using the Delete Anchor Point tool, if you click on an anchor point, it automatically deletes it. And if you have created an anchor point, like in this case here, here's an anchor point that is a square, or like a corner, straight corner. If you hold down the Option or Alt key and drag out the handles, that is the convert direction, which will turn a straight point into a curve, or vice versa. So really those other tools aren't necessary because you have them all there automatically just by where you click on the path, and if you need to, hold down Option or Alt to get that little convert direction tool, just like that.
Sweet. All right, my tip is for people who use the blending modes, and you know who you are. No, of course, blending modes, we all use blending modes because they're so darn blendy. All right, so let's just say we had a duplicate of this layer, and I want to find out which blend mode is going to work best to make my image brighter or darker. And I don't really know which one it is. I mean, I do know which one it is, but if I didn't know which one it was, there's a little keyboard shortcut that will toggle you through every one of these layer blend modes, so you don't have to understand how they work, you just have to know what looks good to you. So here's what you do. Hold the Shift key and use the plus sign. Every time you hit it, Shift plus, it goes through a different blend mode.
Hey, it
So there's
works.
Darker and I know it's nice. Anytime a tip actually works for me, I'm pretty excited. But anyway, so it shows you all the different blend modes. You can see how it would react. So if you say I want my car brighter, you can just keep going until it gets bright. Not there.
I like pin light.
There we go. So there it gets brighter. So there you go. So that's a little quickie for toggling through your blend modes. Matt?
This is real quick. So we're working on an image. Somebody walks by and says, hey, let me see that. Say, all right, but you don't want to show them with all the palettes and all the junk and all the other stuff that's around your image here. It's just very distracting. So here's what you do. You press F. See how it toggles between full screen mode? So you press F. That gets you to a nice black background, and then you hit the Tab key. And the Tab key hides all of your palettes. Okay? Now, the biggest part of this tip is knowing that you can get back. You press F again, and that takes you back to out of the full screen mode into the window mode, and you hit Tab again, and that brings your palettes back. It's also a way to play jokes on your friends. Just go up to their computer, hit the tab key and hide their palettes on them.
Very nice.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, well, I have deliberately made the world's worst selection here of something to show you. It's really bad, but that's so I can have a tip to show you. Is when you're trying to mask something and sometimes, when you make a selection of something, there's little tiny bits you don't really see because they're so small. So the suggestion is that you temporarily turn on a layer style like stroke, and as soon as you do, it becomes very obvious where there are problems. And this one has lots of them, but imagine there were just little dots up here that weren't selected. You would very now clearly see them. So now when you're working on doing the masking with a apparently very odd brush that I was using before, so let's quickly change that back to a more
This has been my favorite Dave
brush.
Cross episode.
So now you can see I know where to mask because I can really see it because of that stroke. And of course, once you're finished, you very quickly turn that off again and have a beautiful selection, just like, well,
That is
not
beautiful.
like that at all. But
All right.
the point is, add a stroke so you can see what you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Here's my tip. There is no keyboard shortcut for flatten image. There's one for merge down, there's one for merge visible, but there isn't one for flatten image. But of course you could go create a keyboard shortcut for flatten image, but you don't have to because there technically is a keyboard shortcut for flatten image, and it's right above there, merge visible. As long as you don't have any layers already hidden, if you choose Shift-Command-E on Mac or Shift-Control-E on PC, I'll show you what it does. So, like the way I just left Photoshop for a
was
second?
great.
That was kind of cool. All right, so if you press Shift-Command-E, watch, flattens the image.
Does it make that sound too?
Well, sometimes. But anyway, so it is a flattening image as long as you don't have any layers hidden. If you do have layers hidden, all it's going to do is bring up a little box that says delete the hidden layers too, or flatten the hidden layers too. You get to choose yes or no. If you choose no, then stop that. All right, what you got there, Bunky? That's my flattening trick there.
All right, I have a soundless tip. No popping sounds. All right, you can use Photoshop to help you center things. So we've got a type layer here. And obviously, I could try to center it if I wanted to just by looking at it. But instead, let's use Photoshop to help. So I'm going to hit Select All. And that selects the entire canvas. And then this kind of hinges on making sure you select the Move tool here. And if you look up in the options bar, you see all these little icons? If you don't, let me zoom in. Look, see? Zoom in.
You're making dizzy.
And you'll see all those little icons here, okay? So you can see the middle one is really what we're going to be looking for, align vertical centers or align horizontal centers. So what does that do? Well, when you click on it, see how it puts my text right into the middle of whatever I had selected. All right, and the same thing goes, I could align it from top to bottom as well if I did vertical centers, but that's not what we want to do. And just deselect. David Cross, you're next.
Okay, well, I have a little, I don't know what to call this, odd perhaps, unusual way of cropping an image. And that is, instead of just taking the crop tool and, of course, cropping, or taking the rectangular marquee tool and cropping that way, you can also crop by selecting a couple of areas that you want to keep. So in this case, for example, I will take my quick selection tool and just drag over the top portion of this leaf in this corner, and then do the same thing down here. And by doing this, I've basically established the parts that I want to make sure are included. So now when I go to Image Crop, it will crop as tightly as it can to those two areas. So it lets me kind of identify key objects and crop accordingly.
I like the hand gestures there. That's very
Choppy.
nice. Choppy,
Pointy.
pointy, cat sound. Okay. I can't believe we get to do this for a living. Okay, mine's
Nor
a
can
really, nor can they. Mine's a really quick one. This is a little type tool shortcut that's kind of a hidden one. Within Photoshop, you can make little columns of type, and if you know how big you want my columns to be 60 points wide or whatever, here's what you can do. Rather than just clicking and kind of dragging it out and guessing how large it's going to be, right? We can do away with that. Just when you get the type tool, hold the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on PC and just click, and it brings up this little paragraph text size dialog box that most people don't realize is there. And you can just type in, and you want it to be 60 points by 128, and it just creates a box that exact size.
Great.
It's a quick tip. It's quick. It's a tip. It's a quickie tip. But we're running out of time, so we got to get 50 tips in a 30-minute show. It's hard.
I'll go quick.
Go.
Quick. All right, you have the selection here, okay? And maybe you go and you deselect, which people do after they have selection. So I deselect. Now I no longer have the selection, and I go through Photoshop, and I brush, and I paint, and I do lots of things, and I forgot to save that selection. I want to get it back. Go up to the Select menu, and if you're lucky enough that you hadn't made a selection since then, just hit Reselect, and Photoshop automatically reselects whatever you had selected the last time. Could be a lifesaver, or it could not be.
Well be a
It might not be,
life-saving
though.
tip.
It might not always save lives. But Dave's tip
Save you
will.
time, though.
Dave's tip will.
My tip will definitely save. No, it won't. Here's what I have. I have a layer, and of course, the rest of it is transparent. And as you're working, when I'm using, for example, the brush tool, I really only want the brush to brush over my little colored rectangle. So I could go here into the layers palette and click on this little lock transparent pixels. And what that'll do is now, as I'm working, no matter where I paint, you see how the paint is only going inside. So that's sort of the first part, but the other part, really sort of the second tip, so we can make more tip than one at the same time, is now that that lock control is on, if you want to toggle it on and off, you use the / key, the one under the question mark, and each time you hit it, look at that, it's going unlock, lock. Let me zoom in so you can see. Unlock, lock, unlock, lock. And the way this works is whatever locking you've chosen, so if you've chosen the ability to lock so you can't move, if you're locking the position, it will turn that one on and off. So just a little / key is a nice little quick toggle back and forth for the locking controls for layers.
Thank you, Dave. All right, mine is a little tip to save you from having to go to the Move tool when you're creating type. So let's say you're writing a sentence here like the mayor of Scriptown. So let's say that you're working on this and you're writing the mayor, M-A-Y-O-R, of downtown, and you realize, oh, I've kind of got this too far off to the left. All you have to do is move your text cursor away from the text, and watch as you get to a certain point, it moves to the Move tool. So you can kind of reposition it, put it where you want it, and then just move your cursor back, and you're ready to go downtown. Scriptown. C-R-I-V-T-O-W-N. And where is Scriptown, you might wonder? This is Scriptown, the place where the scriv rules with an iron fist. Scriv's our producer and general genius guy. Matt?
Yes. All right, check this out. Under the Edit menu, go down to Preset Manager. All right, so Photoshop's got lots of presets. You got brushes, you've got swatches, gradients, styles, patterns, custom shapes, tools, all that fun stuff. Well, the Preset Manager is really the best place where
Getting a call there, man?
all those things live. I thought I shut that off.
Sure you did.
So, for example here, let's say you wanted to just create some brushes, but you don't want to create all of them. All you got to do is click on the brush and maybe shift click on another one. You see it selects all 5 here, and I could save that as a set. Okay, so now I don't have to send that whole brush set to somebody. I could just send exactly the brushes that I wanted to. And that works for everything inside here, not just brushes, but your patterns and just about everything else. That was Scott.
That's your phone? Yeah, I called Matt there. That's his number, by the way, if you want to call his cell phone. It's right there. Okay. Mr. Cross.
Okay, here's a tip for those of you that use a page layout software in addition to Photoshop. So for example, InDesign, and you have your InDesign document set up and you know the width of your columns and the width of the gutter. So here's what you do. In Photoshop, you go to your preferences, to units and rulers, and you set that up right here where it says column size. So let's just pretend, since that's there, that's the size that I know I've set up in InDesign. And you might be asking, why would that be important to me?
Why would that be important to you, Dave?
Well, here's why. Because now when you go to commands like image size, along with being able to change things like inches, you can also say, I'd like this to be X number of columns wide. So you can say, I want this to be 2 columns wide, and it'll do the math and do column plus gutter plus column and do the math for you. So you know it matches your InDesign document perfectly.
I didn't know that. That's very cool.
Very
I'm impressed.
Lightly used, but for those rare occasions, it does a perfect job for you.
No, that tip will save your life.
Yes.
That
if you're an
tip will
InDesign
save
user,
your life.
It's a lifesaver.
If you're like, let's just say that you're kidnapped by a gang and they hold a gun to your head and say, do you happen to know the tip about
Columns,
it could
yeah.
save your, yeah, okay. All right, my tip is almost as useless as the tip that I did before that won't work. I mean, these are not really, these are just kind of to impress your friends tips. One is, of course, we have the splash screen for Photoshop is right here, right? But if you hold the Command key on Mac or the Control key on PC and then choose About Photoshop to bring up the splash screen, it brings up a different splash screen. This is the beta splash screen. So before Photoshop was released, this was the splash screen you would see every day, red pill. And if you look carefully, inside the red pill, you'll see the little cat that's been around. See, he's right there. He's kind of reflected in there. It's very subtle. But the cat, there's a name for the cat. Udo? Uno? It's Udo or Uno or
Udo, I
something.
think. I think it's
Udo? Same with the cat, fitting cat for Photoshop for many years. Now, that's one little one, and I got one little other one for you. If you go to the Layers palette, and a lot of people know this one, but if you don't know it, it's like Dave said, it's new to you. Okay, if you hold the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on PC, and then choose Palette Options. Well, if you just choose Palette Options without holding that key, right, it lets you change the size of your thumbnails, so you can count that as a tip, and I think, in fact, we will. All right, so that's a tip, ding! All right, and then if you hold the Option key, you get something almost as useful, which is this little floating thing right here, which is a palette that says, be gone. Merlin lives.
No purpose.
Be gone. Does absolutely nothing. But hey, I do have a tip for you while I'm here. So let me just show you real quick, because it actually is kind of a tip in blah, blah. If you can find an empty space in your palette, so scroll down to where there's like an empty space, and is there any place where I have an empty space? Not really.
You can only really do it if
you don't have a lot of layers.
Like 1 or 2 layers.
Yeah, so open a document.
Create a new document.
Yeah, create a new document. Thank you, Matt. May I call you Matt?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to create a new document,
Click OK.
and you've got, thank you, and you added a couple layers or whatever, right? If you go down here where there's an empty space and Control-click on a Mac or right-click on a PC, it brings up a list of your thumbnail sizes, so you can choose actually what size thumbnail you would like, right there.
Wow.
But before Matt goes, dun dun dun, we're gonna take a short break. Stick around, we've got some more tips. How many we have? I don't know. We wanted to have 50, but I don't know if it's really gonna happen. Unless they're really quick, lame tips. Like, want to switch to the Move tool? Press V. Ding! It's a tip. All right, stick around. We got a lot more for you right here on Photoshop User TV. Don't go away. All right, the script just told us we're way over time, so we're gonna have to really like super speed up to actually get 50 tips in this show. So Dave, start it off.
Command Option Shift T.
Shift backspace.
D.
V.
Option T.
X.
Shift Tab FFF.
Double click the lasso tool.
Okay, I'm going to get back to my,
all right.
my visually
All
scheduled
right,
tip.
we're gonna zoom through these. So hang on, everybody. Hang on.
Ready?
Go.
All right. So first off, if you ever lose your layers palette, you'll want to know that F7 is the keyboard shortcut to get there because you will always want to be there. The other thing is a lot of people hate the background layer. They despise the background layer. If you want to get rid of the background layer so it's not locked and you want transparency, just double click on it and then click OK. Even better, hold down the Option key and double click on it. It goes straight to a different
That's 3
layer.
tips in one.
That's 3 tips. Ding, 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 ding. Dave, go.
Okay, if you want to edit a gradient, so I've got one started here. If you want to add a new stop, you click once, then double click on it, gets you right to the color picker to choose a different color. Once you've done that, if you want another one of the same color, you Option or Alt drag it.
That's 2 tips.
And then you can drag there, and then over here you can drag the blend between so that it gets darker or lighter, and then on top you can add transparency, so you can change the opacity using, scrubby sliders.
Ding.
There we go.
All right, how do you remove a stop? That'd be a great tip.
How do you move a stop?
Remove a stop.
Oh, remove a stop. Drag it off.
Ah,
so you can
ding,
see it.
ding.
Thank you.
All
Good
right.
one.
Okay. Here we go. All right. Want to change the size of the font that appears up here in your palette?
No.
Well, if you go on, please want to change it. You go over here to. I've even lost track of where to go now. Go to the General Preferences, and there's a little thing that nobody thinks is there. Is the UI font size? You can change it to large, and then when you restart Photoshop, all of your little palette things and all your text will be larger. So if you're really old, can't see, it's perfect.
How do you
All right.
restart Photoshop?
Command Q.
Hey!
On PC, Control Q. Ding! All right. Hey, here's one more real quick while on the preferences. Go down here to type. And there's a preference. You know how you get these font previews over here, like when you go to the font menu? Let me just show you real quick. It's super quick. All right, you go to the font menu, and you get these little previews of how big your fonts are. And you can't tell anything from them. You can actually change those by going to the preferences, right? Go into the preferences. Come on. Go to the preferences. There we go. Go to type. Go to font size previews, change it to huge, and then check this out. This is worth seeing.
Yeah, it is.
Watch this. It's huge. Look how big my fonts are. All right, there's like 3 or 4 or something.
Because large in CS2 wasn't big enough. You had to go to huge.
Huge.
Here's a really cool one, layer style. So you go into the layer style dialog box. This works with the shadow styles. This works with gradient overlay. So Let's say you've got a gradient overlay and you're always kind of repositioning it and changing the scale and all that. A lot of people don't know you can move your cursor over the image and then just click and drag, and now I can actually change where that goes. So I kind of use this as a little spotlight. If I change it to multiply here, drop down the opacity, I kind of got a little spotlight that I can just kind of shine wherever I want to in the image. It works in drop shadow, it works in inner shadow, and it works anywhere else where you can click and drag and try it yourself.
Beauty. Dave.
Okay, I'm going to cheat and do one that's similar to one I did before, but that's okay because it's my tip and I'll tell if you want to. I've got the brush tool
We're
selected.
doing
I
repeat
want to
tips
change
already.
the opacity. Instead of going up to the opacity slider, I just type the number. So 6 for 60, 4 for 40, and so on. And if I want to change the flow, shift and the number, 70, 30, and so on. Now, here's the trick. If you have the airbrush option turned on, it's the other way around. To change the opacity is shift and the letter. To change the flow is just the number. So
Ding, ding,
changes
ding.
on the fly. That was about 5, I hope.
At 5 at least. All right, here I am in Camera Raw. Here's a bunch of quick tips. Change your white balance, right? Change your white balance to something crazy. Hey, that looks crazy. Double click on the white balance tool up here. It resets it to the original. All right, how about this? Make some crazy changes or make some good changes, which none of these are. And you say, I wonder what it looked like when I started. Just press the letter P and it shows you a before and after. Basically, that turns the preview off. Also, want to know if you're clipping without looking at your histogram? Hold the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on PC. Clip on the exposure slider. All right, there it is. There's the, are you clipping? Yes, you are. Also, here's a tip. There's an auto button here. Don't ever hit it. Okay, that's a tip. And I had one more. Oh, also, if you're zoomed in tight, you want to get back to the 100% view, double click on the grabber hand thing. Takes you back to 100% view. So, besides the messed up tip, that's better. Oh, Scott Davsky. Okay, go.
Do I got the last tip?
Yeah, you can do one. Well, Dave has one already queued up, and we.
All right, Dave's going. Jeez. All right, so you have a type layer, and if you want to create text that's close to that type layer, you grab your type tool, right? And you start to click, like I want to put some text right above here. And if I click, all it does is select my type. It won't let me actually type there. So what you do, if you want to type near it, just hold down your Shift key, kind of changes your cursor. Now I can put it anywhere I want. I can even go right over on the top of it. You see here I can put another type layer right there.
Amazing. I've got one quick one just before we send it back over to Dave, and Dave will be the last one. If you're working with a brushes palette and you want to have the brushes palette appear wherever you are, because you don't want to have to go back up to the brushes palette to change brushes, just control click and the brush palette shows up right where you are, choose a new size, paint, and it goes away.
Absolutely stunning.
Very nice.
Dave.
If you want to actually change the shape of your letters, you go to the layer menu, take your type layer, and change it to a work path. Then I can hide my type layer, can use the various editing tools to go in. For example, that's the wrong one, so let's use this one. And I could go in and change something like the bottom of this and make it, oh, that's nice.
No, that's very
things
nice.
Like that was a great example. How about this one? Let's go in here instead and pull this up here. Yeah, just like that.
This is
a
looking good.
fantastic
Yeah,
tip to
avant-garde
end,
kind of.
And it was a perfect choice of font to do that. So yeah, there we go. And once you're finished, you turn it into a selection, and you make a new layer, and you fill it with something, and it looks like horrible type.
No, it's beautiful. All right, guys. Well, that is it for our special 50 Tips holiday episode. And I'm not sure that there actually were 50 legitimate tips there, but I happen to know that our editor will actually count tips that perhaps weren't tips. Like, be careful when you have a cell phone not to drop it, set it down gently.
Or turn it off while you're filming.
Before you
an
film
episode.
Photoshop TV, turn your cell phone off.
Ding. Hey, guys, thanks so much. Next week, of course, we're going to be back with another show, probably.
If you are watching this on Monday, Happy New Year.
Yes.
And we'll see you next year.
Also, one last thing. Don't forget, start your year off right. Go check out kelbytraining.com for our brand new online subscription service. And you can learn tons and tons of stuff to start your year off right. Have a crazy Photoshop advantage on the rest of the world. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you guys next week right here on Photoshop User TV. On behalf of myself and Matt Kloskowski.
Bye.
And Dave Kloskowski. See you next time. We'll see you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.